Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast, episode number 34. My name is Haley. I'm going to be your host today and every single day that you are tuning in. Today, I am joined with Kayla Lyons, who is the founder of 1,000 Hours Dry. Now, if you're not familiar, 1,000 Hours Dry is an amazing online community that's alcohol-free, and they really support people who are on the alcohol-free path, sober curious, etc., etc. Anybody that's interested in dipping their toes into this lifestyle. So many amazing resources, amazing people that you can connect with there. I had stumbled on 1,000 Hours Dry when I was fairly new along in my alcohol-free journey, and I had no idea that there was even a space out there that could connect people that were on this path. So today we really dive into sharing our experience. Kayla talks about what led her to creating 1,000 Hours Dry, sheds light on what led her to ultimately ditching alcohol, and we really just go over everything and anything. So if you're thinking about maybe ditching alcohol in this new year, you're thinking maybe you want to give it a try, go ahead and listen to this conversation, guys. I'm telling you some amazing insights here. Kayla is such a lovely person, and we really had an awesome conversation. So if you're interested, stay tuned. All right, my friends, welcome back to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast. Today, I am joined with Kayla Lyons, the founder of 1,000 Hours Dry. Kayla, welcome.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to pick your brain and to talk about everything alcohol-free, everything in between. So
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to hopefully educate some minds today.
yeah, for sure. I have to say, first and foremost, I ditched alcohol. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary actually on New Year's Eve a couple days ago. So that was really exciting for me. But when I was about 6 months through, it was something that I sort of kept to myself for a really long time. Like, not that I was ashamed of it, but it wasn't something that I had publicized. And I think around 6 months through, I decided, I'm like, maybe there's other people out there that are also, ditching alcohol and just decided that they didn't want it to be a part of their life anymore. So long story short, that's when I found 1,000 Hours Dry. And I have to tell you, it is such a godsend. Like, I think the sober, curious, alcohol-free community is probably one of the most supportive spaces that I've found online. So kudos to you.
Thank you, and congratulations on 1 year. That's a huge milestone.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess we'll go ahead and dive into everything today. So I wanted to kind of start with giving everybody that's listening to this a little bit of a background. So obviously you're the founder of 1,000 Hours Dry, which is amazing. So I was wondering if you could kind of share a little bit about your backstory of your journey with going alcohol free and what kind of led you down this path of 1,000 Hours Dry.
Yeah, so for sure. I have been alcohol free now for a little bit over 4.5 years. And I started 1,000 Hours Dry about almost 2 years ago. So for me, I got sober at 23, and this was before the, online social media sober community was even existed. So for me, as a young person getting sober, I really didn't have a lot of options. I went to a treatment center, and after that, their aftercare program is pretty much do a 12-step program. Like, there weren't any other really suggestions, even though I was living in Los Angeles, which, is kind of the hub of recovery. That's where all the treatment centers are, and that's where a lot is going on. If you are in recovery, it's a great place to be. But as time went on for me, um, I just wasn't fitting into the mold as I guess I would say of a typical 12-step program goer. And I didn't know what to do, because there wasn't anything else out there.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to stay alcohol free. I knew I wanted to stay sober, because for me, it wasn't necessarily a health choice. I think that it's amazing, the sober curious movement that's going on. Being sober for the health of it, I 100% promote that. My personal story, though, is I do identify as somebody who has recovered from a substance abuse disorder. Alcohol and drugs were part of my story. So for me, getting sober and staying sober were really crucial, not only to my mental health, but just my life in general. And so I knew that I needed to stay sober no matter what. But what I was doing in the beginning just wasn't working for me. You know, uh, there was a sense of community, but there were some rules, and I'm a very out of the box person. I need no to little restrictions, or I get very, agitated and anxious. And so what really inspired me to start this online community was definitely not altruistic. I needed a community for myself, especially as a young person in recovery, because, you're 23, everybody around you's drinking, partying still. We're just out of college. And the norm is every weekend we're getting drunk, we're going to the clubs, and then there's really no activity outside of drinking. Like,
Yeah.
alcohol is the activity itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so amazing. First of all, congratulations on still, staying sober and doing what you're doing and transforming that experience that you went through and kind of finding your own way and carving your own path, especially like you said, as a young person. I mean, I'm only 24 years old, so I can totally relate.
Mm-hmm.
My personal story is I, was never in recovery or anything like that. I had sort of just decided to eliminate alcohol for mental, emotional, health reasons as well. I think it's multifaceted. My why also kind of changes as time goes on, which we'll get into later. But something that you said that I think is so important and something that's really difficult, especially as a young person, is our culture so heavily emphasizes alcohol with every social situation. Like, anytime you hang out with your friends, it becomes an excuse to drink, or at least that's how it was in my old circle of friends. Like, you watch The Bachelor, you drink with your friends, you go to the club, you go to the beach, you go to brunch, you hang out in your backyard. Drinking is such a huge part of everything. And I think that sometimes is what's scary for young people, especially to make the decision to stop drinking, is because they fear that kind of social pressure. I mean, do you still feel like that social pressure is around even now?
I would say with the sober time I have under my belt, it is definitely lessened because I have a routine, right? So, like, one thing we push in the beginning of sobriety at 1,000 hours dry really is like your sobriety toolbox. So creating this toolbox with coping mechanisms, with prevention, how to deal with cravings, how to deal with social situations, and really building a lifestyle that is alcohol free, so you can continue to go and do things that may involve alcohol, because unfortunately that's the majority of things,
Yeah.
um, without feeling A, like you're left out, or B, like you're gonna, feel pressured or uncomfortable. And that's not to say that there aren't times that I don't feel uncomfortable, but when you feel confident in what you're doing and people know, they respect you for it. And I can't tell you the amount of people that, are close friends to me, my boyfriend's friends, who are constantly like, whenever I do show up at a party, because I really just don't go out a lot. I'm generally not a super social person. So when I
Same.
do kind of make an appearance, they, drinkers love to be like, oh my God, like, I wish I could do what you're
Yeah.
doing. And, like, it's funny how it's like the total opposite of what your anxiety tells you, is that everyone's going to judge me, everyone's going to notice that I'm not going to drinking, and everyone's going to keep asking, when it's like, I had a girlfriend who's in the same group of friends who is not sober, but she did 1,000 hours dry, and like all of her friends were like raving, and they were like, oh my God, like, that's so awesome. So, I think it's a fallacy, this idea that going sober is so boring, or, everyone's going to judge me. It's really something that's admirable. And I think we need to, educate people on that more, so they can feel more confident about their choice. Not like it's, you're not giving something up, you're actually investing in yourself and doing something that a lot of people wish that they could do and don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate with everything you said 1,000%. Like, I remember when I first decided to stop drinking, I kept the decision to myself because I was so anxious when I first started. You know, what are people going to think of me? No, people are going to think I'm boring now. They're not going to want it to invite me anywhere. And just all this kind of, you know, self-doubt that trickles in. But part of what I've realized, at least in my experience, and I'm not sure if you can relate, is that not having alcohol in my life now has actually been the most empowering decision I've made. It's given me a sense of confidence, a sense of self-worth that I never had before. Whereas I thought I needed to have alcohol to, you know, be having fun at a party or to be somehow accepted or to seem more social or more outgoing. Whereas it's actually the inverse, which is really crazy. Because I know for me, when I first started this, I thought it was going to be the opposite. I thought I would tell people I don't drink and they would think I was, you know, a freak, or they wouldn't really, you know, it's just,
Yeah.
it's funny how it all sort of unravels.
Well, it's a stigma, right? And we have multiple stigmas in our society, you know, addiction and alcohol and sobriety being one of them, because it's basically completely glorified. And, you know, basically what you said, going back to everything that people do revolves around alcohol. And to me, half the time when my friends are, you know, quote unquote, doing something, the actual activity itself is alcohol. So
Yeah,
like, hey guys, let's get together and drink. I'm like, well, are
that's
we
so
gonna
true.
like do something else? Like, is there gonna be like games? Are we gonna
Yeah.
watch a movie? It's like, no, we're just gonna like hang out and like listen to music. I'm like, and you think I'm boring? Like, that's
Yeah.
boring as fuck. You're literally not doing anything. So
Yeah.
the crazy thing is, right, like, how would somebody feel if you were like, hey girl, like, do you want to come over and like drink water with me?
Yeah. Like,
uh I don't know, girl, like, I'm pretty
yeah.
hydrated.
Yeah. Right.
What So it's this idea, this mind, you know, a mindset shift that we need to have, and that we need to, you know, allow people to consider that it's it's not really an activity, right? Like, it's a drug, and
Yeah.
it's a mind altering substance, and it's really not that exciting. And that's one thing I noticed as I got older too, because I thought, you know, okay, I'm, you know, this kind of sucks at 23, but like, I'm going to get older and my friends are going to grow out of it, and I'm going to have, you know, more chill stuff. But that was totally not true. The majority of the people that I know still drink pretty heavily. And
Same.
even though I have sober friends, it is really hard to find people who actually mindfully drink or moderately drink, like, according to CDC guidelines, you know. And this is not coming from a judgmental place. Like, obviously we were drinkers and there's a reason we're
Yeah.
sober. um, but it is hard to, you know, watch people around you consume something that you know is so unhealthy for them, and it can feel alienating. But I kind of have to remind myself, like, there's a revolution happening. We are, you know, creating a seat at the table for our, you know, our people, and we might feel isolated now in the minority, but in reality there are 30% of Americans don't drink. Like, that's a huge fucking number.
Yeah.
So all we have to do is increase that by 20%, and we're half, you know. So just, I remind myself, like, we're at the forefront of a revolution of changing people's wellness, hopefully, you know, really decreasing deaths, decreasing heart related death, decreasing just a general smorgasbord of, you know, health related problems. And to me, that's super rad, and that's way more important than what fucking Karen thinks of me, you
Hell
know,
yeah.
at the party. Like, fuck
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah. No, for real. That's so true. Like, especially now, I feel like we are, you know, you are definitely at the way forefront of this movement, but I feel like now, you know, as we go into 2021, this is really starting to take off on a global scale. Like, we are having our voice be heard, right? More and more. And I think the more that people like us speak up about this and sort of share our experience will inspire more people to also, explore sobriety, maybe sober curious, whatever it might be. Because I know, at least in my life, once I started to be a lot more open about my experience and share it, I had tons of people reaching out to me, also sharing that they were thinking about ditching alcohol or their experience with it, their struggle, or, just curiosity in general. And I think a big part of that is having the courage to speak out. And it's scary sometimes, right? Because you always have that little voice in your head that's like, are people going to judge me? This is so against the norm, right? Of what everyone does in our age demographic, especially. Like, but if you have the right people around you too, people will accept you for your choice, and people will praise you for your choice, because it's a healthy choice that should be celebrated. It's not something that we should hide away, or we should be proud of the decision to put our health first, like mentally, spiritually, physically. So
100%. I think just like anything else here, we have to remember, like, I take everything with a grain of salt. Like, I love America, but like, look at our track record, right? Like 50 years ago, people were smoking cigarettes when they were pregnant, smoking in airplanes,
yeah,
smoking literally everywhere. 100 years ago, people were like taking cocaine. They thought it was good for you. Like, it was like the
yeah.
ailment for everything. And then before that, we had heroin literally on the shelves at like pharmacies. So this idea that, oh, alcohol can't possibly be that bad for you because it's socially accepted, and it's sold at stores and it's sold at restaurants, but it's really just this huge successful marketing campaign that has happened, and it's total bullshit. Like, I try and compare it to the engagement ring, and most people don't know the engagement ring is total bullshit. It doesn't come from anywhere. Like, this
Oh,
idea
really?
that, no. So I'm a consumer marketing major, and so we learn a lot about how to get people to buy shit, how to get people to purchase your service. And the engagement ring actually came from De Beers Diamonds, which is like the biggest diamond retailer in the world.
Mm-hmm.
um they created a campaign, probably like, it's like, I can't believe it's 2021, probably like 100 years ago or something, maybe less time than that, actually. So they created a campaign to sell diamonds, saying like, oh, this is the engagement ring. You buy it when you want to propose to somebody. It's the diamonds are forever. Like, that's where that saying comes from.
Oh,
And
wow.
that turned into, it's a social thing, right? So like, a couple people start doing it, and everybody feels obligated because, like, oh, well, Susan got a ring, so like, I want a ring.
Right.
And now it is, right, the social norm. Like, I don't know anybody that gets engaged that doesn't have a ring. And it's literally like, there's no cultural roots, there's no actual anything behind it. It was literally just a marketing ploy from a diamond company. And
That
that's
is
where,
fascinating. I never knew that.
yeah. So it's crazy. The same thing with toothpaste. Like, I mean, I can recommend you some really good
Wow.
books about it, but
Yeah.
it's it's amazing to me. Basically, as a marketer, I applaud big alcohol because they really have fooled everybody. But realistically, that's what has happened. Like, we have been fooled into thinking you need alcohol for fun. All things need
Absolutely.
to, all things social need to revolve around alcohol. There has to be, a drink at the restaurant at my dinner. So it's like, when you really think about and ask yourself, and I ask people, my friends, all the time, like, so why are you drinking now? And it's like, well, because it's Friday. I'm like, okay, cool. But like, is that a reason? Or are you just doing it because it's a habit, and because, it's the social norm to
Right.
have a drink on the weekends? So it's really just, it's kind of a sheep thing to do. And I was totally, part of that matrix, but it's kind of
Oh,
like,
same.
taking the little blue pill, and now being on the other side, you see what's really going on. And it's crazy, but it's not dumbfounded, because this is literally, to me, exactly what tobacco did. And we can look back, and that was even recent, and see, wow, like we really were completely fooled. It was totally socially normal, just like alcohol was. And now look, people are doing it, but nobody's going around bragging about how much they smoke. It's normally a shameful thing. And so I would like to see alcohol going in that direction.
That is such an amazing point of tying, tobacco to alcohol now. I think honestly, we're at the beginning now of whenever tobacco started phasing out, we're probably at the start of that phase now because like you said, so many people are starting to, that sheep analogy. It's like once the veil's been lifted and you see the other side of it, you're like, what the hell was I doing? Like, and kind of going off of what you said too, especially the marketing that surrounds alcohol right now is ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure you saw what Tropicana had with their recent ad that I think they took
Oh
down
yeah.
within a day. Yeah, that was just ridiculous. But the whole industry as a whole, it's like it definitely sort of plays with your psyche and makes you think that you need that to be like validated or you need it to unwind, right? That was a big thing with Tropicana. It's like self-care. It's like self-care is not drowning your sorrows with a bottle of booze in your bathroom. Like that is not self-care,
No. And I think it's a lot of people have come to me in kind of a counter, right? Because I want to surround myself with people who do have other opinions, because if I just surround myself with like-minded people, I'm not going to grow. But when they say something like, well, everything in moderation, that's kind of, what people like to validate their drinking with. And
Yeah.
my kind of counter to that is, for sure, like I'm a very like health conscious person, but I do every once in a while, like if my boyfriend and I have a date night and there's like a really bomb dessert on the menu, I'll order it, but that's
Yeah.
not happening every weekend. It's maybe happening once a month. And to me, that's mindful consumption, right? Because I'm aware like processed sugar is the devil, like white sugar, white sugar is horrible for you, and is just as dangerous in a lot of ways, as drugs. So, having that piece of cake to me is, it's an enjoyment, it's a treat, but it's seldom and rare. It truly is. And so for me, when people say, well, this glass of wine is comparable to that, I'm like, okay, you know, Jackie, are you having that glass of wine once a month, or are you having it every weekend or every night? So this idea of, well, I'm being moderate or I'm being mindful, people trick themselves into thinking that they're moderating because it's their idea of moderation. But in reality, there's, there's no amount of alcohol that's good for you, just like there's no amount of cake that's good for
Yeah.
you. But I personally don't have a problem with mindful drinking. The problem is most people can't and don't do that, and have a skewed perception of, like you said, self-care. I'm going to treat myself
Mm-hmm.
to alcohol, and this idea that alcohol is somehow a reward, when in reality, it's really just stealing tomorrow's happiness. And that was something I read yesterday that really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's so true. I think back to when I was in college, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but I used to like live for my weekends. And I think that that's a cycle that a lot of college kids get into, right? It's like you grind through the week and then you go out Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And it's like you live for that, but then you wake up with a terrible hangover and you can't even do anything the whole day, Saturday and Sunday. And it's just this vicious cycle that you get caught in. It's like, really, like I used to think of that as like a reward for myself. Like it's crazy how much my mindset has shifted, and I'm sure yours too, just being, as you said, on the other side of it.
Oh yeah, I think back, and it really brought me back. I did a Zoom meeting last night with, Fun Shit Blog, who was doing like a meetup for young people, and I was like, well, I'm in college, but I'm not like super young anymore. Can I still join? And I was probably like the oldest person there, but it was really rad to see all these like young people still in college who are sober and sober curious. And I just kind of explained to them, a lot of them, the fear is FOMO, right? Like I'm in a fraternity, I'm in a sorority, I'm part of this club. Everything we do revolves around drinking. A lot of, colleges, like I went to Virginia Tech. It's such a small town. The only thing to do there is go to the bars or go to like, a Greek life party. There's
Yeah.
nothing else there. So I totally think it's a valid, fear to have. But the reality is, right, you're not actually missing out. Like you're taking away from your experience. I look back at my college experience and I look back with regret because I spent, 3 years there and I don't remember half of it because I was like on
Yeah.
drugs and drinking so much. And then, you know, instead of really harnessing and being grateful for getting into such a good school and having, the privilege of having an education, I totally threw it away by partying and showing up to class drunk and not, like not showing up to class at all. And eventually, getting on academic probation and having to leave school to go to treatment, which
Yeah.
was court ordered. It
Wow.
was
Yeah.
either that or 3 months of jail for me. And obviously I was like, no,
Wow.
thank you.
Yeah.
Um, but even then, I looked back and I think, fuck, like I really wish I had taken that time to enjoy the real college experience, right? Like you get the freedom of adulthood without all the responsibilities yet. Not everybody, but my personal, I was lucky enough I was being supported by my parents as long as I was in school. They were helping me financially. And so I look back and I'm like, this was like the golden fucking age. I wasn't paying my own rent. I had
Same.
total
Yeah.
freedom. I had my own nice apartment and I'm chilling. And I literally treated it like trash and treated myself like trash and wasted my entire experience. Like instead of enjoying these amazing football games that we're known for, you know,
Yeah.
I was blacked out at most of the games. Instead of going to all these, like I look at all the events that would happen and the clubs and just the involvement that I could have had that just wasn't even on my mind because I was like, well, we're going to Taco Tuesday, we're going to Bingo Wednesday,
Mhm.
we're going to Tots Thursday. And not to say that I don't have some good memories, because that would be lying, but overall, like if I could go back and redo it, I for sure would. And I would have a way better experience sober, like 100 fucking percent.
Yeah. I think that's something that even for me, I think back to my college experience. I think that I would too. I mean, I was definitely involved, but it's drinking is just such a huge part of college culture. Like there's when you're in it too, you feel the peer pressure. At least for me, I felt it so strongly where it's like, okay, well, everyone else is drinking, like I should probably, go out too. And then like I said earlier, it just became this cycle. Like my senior year, towards the end of it, I was like going out every night, like
Oh
every
yeah.
freaking night. And I'm like, I think back on it now, it's like that was time wasted. Like also people think, when you're drinking with your friends, they'll say, oh, well, we're just living in the moment. It's like, well, you're actually really so detached from the moment because if you're sober, that's when you're fully present, right? You're fully mindful. And it's like when you're drinking and you don't
Hmm.
barely remember what happened, that's not living in the moment.
Literally the opposite.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? Like I'm not here to say that a lot of the things like alcohol does inhibit you. Alcohol does take away, your anxiety temporarily. So it's for me when I really talk to somebody who's serious about, sobriety or even just, 1,000 hours dry, like my boyfriend's doing the challenge right now because he is, finding himself kind of in that habitual drinking on the weekends,
Yeah.
drinking too much sometimes and wants to break that. Um, and I told him, I was like, you can't just not drink for 42 days. Like you have to figure out what you want your relationship with alcohol to look like, how you're going to deal with stress, how you're going to socialize without alcohol. And he's lucky enough that I'm getting tons of like, free product and stuff that people send for 1,000 hours dry. So he's won the lottery when it comes to, all these NA options.
Yeah.
So for him, it's not really, there's not a big excuse, but I tell people, I get it. Like there's a reason that I partied as hard as I did for 8 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
when people think like, oh, because none of the people in my life right now, except for my boyfriend, knew me when I was drinking.
Oh,
So
wow.
to them, because I'm living on the other side of the states now, and I moved from LA down to Orange County, and so really, the friends that I've made here, because I've been sober for so long, it they just they don't know that side of me, and so which is great for me because I was like an awful bitch. But my boyfriend does because we went to college together. Um, and so in a sense, it's cool because he's seen me through all of that and he still loves me, and still supports me. And obviously I know no matter how bad shit gets, he's like ride or die, which is rad. But it's funny to look at people who don't really know that side of me and kind of get the impression that I think a lot of people are worried about with their identity, right? Like Kayla's really reserved, she's really rigid, she's kind of boring, like she doesn't
Yeah.
come out that much, like your girlfriend's really nice, but we don't know a lot about her. And it's just so funny because when I do finally go and chat and people want to know, because people ask like, so you don't drink, why?
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem sharing. And I just kind of, the what comes out of my mouth is so, I imagine, opposite of what they think I'm going to say. Because for me, like, I was getting into fights, I had assaulted a police officer, which I shouldn't be laughing, but
Wow.
I was completely like out of control. Like I think for me, like there was no like gradual, uh, you know, it didn't start off slow. I hit the ground running and started drinking at like 16. And I already had 3 underage alcohol citations by the time I graduated when I was 17. So like for me, like moderation doesn't work. Like
Yeah.
I've drank a couple of times in the past 4.5 years, and it's not that anything crazy happened, but it was so not enjoyable,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but it is funny to hear people, that if you're worried, I think if you're listening and you're worried that people will judge you, like my thought process is, you know what, I'd rather somebody think that I'm a little bit reserved and quiet than what a lot of people thought of me as before, which is like loud, inconsiderate, unreliable. Um, a lot of the things that no one would ever say about me now, which is crazy, because I think
Yeah.
I was not to be trusted. And now, people rely on me for a lot of things. I'm in part of 2 businesses, which is crazy. So, um, you just have to decide for yourself, what's the trade-off, right? Like, okay, so you have like 30% more fun than me at the party because you have less social anxiety, but like I get to feel totally fine the next morning and you get to feel like shit.
Yeah.
So like I'm good.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that's a huge misconception that sometimes circulates around with this kind of stuff is like people will assume, oh, well, she must be boring, she must not like to have fun or do anything. And that's totally not true. Like back to what you said earlier of so many things now, the activity being the drinking itself. It's like there is so much. I mean, obviously in this situation with the world right now with the pandemic, it's a little bit different, but there's so much to do that doesn't involve drinking. Like so much.
Yeah, like go on a walk.
Yeah.
Wow. That- That's totally free and you can literally do it anywhere and it's good for you and it doesn't involve drinking. Like I didn't realize personally, how enjoyable other things could be because I never gave myself the opportunity to do them. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And it's scientific, right? So when you drink, whether it's daily or whether it's just regularly, you basically screw up your pleasure baseline. So we all have our baseline for pleasure. When we're younger, pretty much everything makes us happy. We're stoked about a lollipop, we're stoked
Mm.
about a new toy. And then as you get older and you start using more substances, your baseline starts going up. So it's, you know, I'm trying to think of a good way to say it without getting like too sciencey. Um,
I know what you're
you
trying to
base
say. Like
your tolerance, I guess, for pleasure and dopamine starts to go up.
yeah.
So you basically whittle your box down to, okay, well, the only things that really make me feel good anymore are, maybe cocaine and drinking and, sex or something. So
Mhm.
then those are the only three things that you start to go to when you feel like shit or when you want to enjoy yourself, because that's where you've set the bar. So when you go alcohol free, your body is naturally going to come back down to its baseline, but it's going to take a little bit of time, and you have to explore other hobbies in the meantime that once gave you pleasure, or that you have, the possibility of enjoying, and give yourself that chance to rebuild that baseline. And I do Sudoku now. Like, I'm so fucking, like that's,
Yeah.
you know I would have never in a million years like done that outside of an airplane, and now I like do it before bed. And
Yeah.
it's enjoyable for me, just like how reading is enjoyable for me, or cleaning is enjoyable for
Yeah.
me.
I totally relate to that. I mean, my story, I'll just share it with you. My listeners know a little bit about my background, but the thing for me that really led to me wanting alcohol out of my life was I had my spiritual awakening last year, so I had a lot of,
Mm,
pain and stuff that I was dealing with in my life. And once I started to awaken to that spiritual side of myself, I just started to slowly realize I'm like, this isn't fun for me anymore. I don't feel good doing this anymore. And from like an energetic standpoint, kind of like what you were saying with scientifically, alcohol actually lowers our vibration rather than raising it. So we always want to raise our
mm.
vibration, right? So I found myself in this place of it just not resonating anymore. Like I just felt this resistance to it. And I'll never forget the last time I drank was at a Zed concert in New York City. I was with a few of my girlfriends and they were all drinking champagne, like going crazy. And I had like one glass of champagne and I literally was like, this is it. Like, this is the last time I'm drinking. I don't want to wake up
Yeah.
hungover. Like, I don't want this to be a part of my life anymore. And it was sort of that like mindset shift. Whereas, I'm such a different person like now than I used to be. And I'm sure you can relate as you were sharing. Like, I love nothing more than to drink my cup of tea at night. Like I'm drinking tea right now, or waking up early to read a book in my bed. Like that's one of my favorite things to do, which if you told me that a few years ago, I'd be like, what? Like that's something a grandma would do. Like that's not
Yeah,
me.
totally.
But it's literally like I find the smallest, like most mundane things now enjoyable, which I think is a huge perspective switch. And I think having alcohol out of the equation for me has been a big part of that.
Oh yeah. I think don't put yourself in a box, right? Like, so many of us are so attached to our identity of being the party girl, being, the good time guy. And when you consider not drinking anymore, you basically have an identity crisis. And that's totally relatable, but at the same time, like, do you want to be that person forever? Because realistically, that's what's going to happen. Like, there's this preconceived idea that, like, oh, if I just get older, like I'll grow out of it or it'll change. And it's like, no, dude, like it doesn't
Yeah.
happen like that. I have a ton of friends, who are married, who are having kids now and stuff, and they're still doing the same shit. Like, now they just have a toddler running around, which makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Or now they own a house, so now they can wreck their house, or it's just, it doesn't change the way you think it does. So you have to change yourself, because you can't just expect, I'm going to grow out of this, my environment's going to change, and so I'm not going to want to do this as much. But like, the mommy wine culture is, like we had said with Tropicana before, like it's crazy. I'm sure
Yeah.
with men, especially in the corporate, world, like it is raging with alcoholism, and just
Oh
everywhere. Like,
yeah,
alcohol is
absolutely.
everywhere. And so you have to kind of ask yourself, is this how I want to live? Like you said. And I had kind of a similar, spiritual awakening, an enlightenment moment for me. The moment I decided, I'm done. Uh, and like you said, I think one of the kind of the, I don't want to call it a red flag, but when you, like, I think people always ask, right? Like, how do you know when you're done? Because like I'm sober curious, or like I've been trying to get sober for a while and I just keep going back. And for me, what I noticed, the difference between like what was really the end and what was, you know, still me kind of holding on, like it's like what you said, like it's not fun anymore. So I just, I have a memory of me sitting in my kitchen and pouring a glass of vodka and like just like drinking it was like barium or something. Like I was like, oh, why am I doing this? It's disgusting. Like I had to like force myself to do it because I didn't even really want to do it anymore. But in that moment, I really didn't know how else to like handle, I was in a really volatile relationship with another addict, and I didn't want to feel how I felt, and I didn't have any other coping mechanisms yet. But I also had started to recognize like this isn't working. This like really is not working anymore.
Yeah.
And you have enough of those moments, and you get enough seeds planted, right? Like so you get all these
Yes. Yeah.
random seeds, and then they start to grow, and you start to just really it gets old. It's like watching the same fucking movie. If you had like the same movie on replay forever, and then you realize like this is really fucking boring. I'm done. I'm tired. This is exhausting. And for me, I had a bad night, probably not my worst night, but it was an accumulation of multiple small rock bottoms over the years. And for me, I'm driving back. I was visiting family. I'm driving back to LA. I'm stuck in traffic, of course. I'm like coming down hard because I was coming off drugs, coming off of, binging the whole day. So I'm like throwing up in my McDonald's cup,
Oh my God.
stuck on the grapevine, like in the middle of the mountains. I'm crying because no one will talk to me. I like fucked everything up. And I really in that moment thought that I was gonna like lose everybody in my life. And that's when I had like in AA, like when I did that before, like they call it a God shot. And even though I don't believe in God, like I think that's a really cool way to put it, like a God shot, a universe nugget.
Yeah. Universe nugget. I love that.
Yeah, like it just, something switched. Like I don't know how to explain it any other way. Like there was just, I think it's, to me, it's probably what people experience when they do like ayahuasca or,
Yeah.
something where there's just this transcendent moment of perception change. And for me, hitting this like uncomfortable, like I want to basically be, not even be dead, but I don't want to be alive. Like I don't want to live right now moment. And I had that switch, and I was like, all right, like I'm getting my shit together. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't look back, for a long time. And so I think you can't force that, unfortunately, but you can set yourself up, I think, by following sober accounts and trying to do dry spells, and not forcing yourself, because if you don't want to get sober yet, you're not going to stay sober.
Yeah.
But you can you know prepare yourself for when you are ready by getting all your resources ready, reading a lot of quit lit, listening to a lot of podcasts, and educating yourself, because that's one thing that a lot of people that are in the dry club tell us, is that I didn't know like any of this information, and now that I know it, I can't unknow it. And so
Yeah.
it's really hard to go back to drinking when it's a carcinogenic, when what it's doing to your liver, what it's doing to your stomach lining, the increase that you have of getting, cancer, especially breast cancer for women. It's
Yeah.
like, I could never go back to drinking soda. Like it's 34 grams of sugar in one can of Coke. That's
Yeah.
insane to me. And so that's just kind of how I see alcohol now. It's like, I think I would literally rather eat a piece of gum off the sidewalk.
Yeah. You know what? It's so true. Like,
Like
um,
gross, but totally
yeah,
true.
you can't unlearn what you learn, right? Like, I think of it honestly as poison at this point, just in every facet. It's like, why would I put that shit in my body? You know? Why? It's not
Yes.
serving me. It is not serving me in any way. It's not benefiting me in any way. I want nothing to do with it. And it's not to say, like you said earlier, like I obviously too, if I want to get, like a cheeseburger or something, like hell yeah, I'm going to go for it. But knowing what I know now about alcohol specifically, no freaking way. Like people have asked me too, like, do they ever think I'm going to drink again? And I want nothing to do with it. Like I'm good, you know?
No, and the thing is too, like, I asked myself that question multiple times over years and stuff, and I'm very transparent about my own journey. I have drank, and some of it, it's COVID, and for me, it was
Yeah.
also like a lot of curiosity about mindful drinking and almost a little bit of research for me, because I'm like, you know what? I do believe in the diathesis stress model of addiction. I don't believe it's a disease. So I really do think that if you heal and if you work on, you know, why you're drinking, because to me, substance abuse is a symptom, then you should be able to moderate that. Just not that you have to, but right, like if you are somebody who was drinking as a coping mechanism and you heal your trauma and you move forward, then there shouldn't be any reason why you couldn't, go back and have a drink. And so I kind of tested that theory, and it was true for me. Like, I consider myself fully recovered. I nothing happened. Like, I used to like get violent or just black out and be really mean. And my relationship with alcohol totally changed. It was not like that at all, but it was just not really enjoyable like I thought maybe it would be. You have, I think everybody kind of has this thought in the back of their mind that like maybe one day I can go back and have a glass of champagne at my wedding, or drink a glass of wine here and there. And I kind of experimented with that, and I did that 2 or 3 times, and I was like, this is just it. It's really not. It doesn't serve me anymore,
Yeah.
you know. And so for me, that was really cool, and also really empowering, because I was like, alcohol no longer has any power over me in any sense. Not as something that I have to be fearful of, not something that consumes my life. I'm indifferent to it. And to me, that's like it's like a way bigger step, right? And they tell you in relationships, like the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Like when you're indifferent towards someone, like it's fucking done.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was kind of my relationship with alcohol. Like I I don't care about it anymore. It's just not something I want to consume. It's not something I need in my life. I love living the alcohol-free lifestyle. I love promoting it. I love waking up feeling great. I love going to the gym and, exercising and knowing that my muscles are, going to grow at the rate that I allow them to, and with supplementation and stuff. And I'm not putting shit in my body that's going to stunt my growth mentally, physically, spiritually. Um, but yeah, everybody's journey is their own thing, right? And so I say just don't put yourself in a box, and don't restrict yourself in any ways, because that can get you into trouble. If you're somebody like me who, I have other issues that I deal with outside of substance abuse. And so I found that forging my own path really worked for me. And then having such a supportive community where I can be fully transparent, and no one is saying, well, you have to start your day count over. Well, you're not really sober. Well, you can't do this. And my comeback is kind of like, well, fuck you. I started this community. So like I can do whatever
Yeah.
I want, first of all. And second of all, the only person that made up those rules was like 100 years ago, some dude named Bill, who like wrote a book that's like not even a medical journal, and he just made up a random rule. So, you know, it it just doesn't make sense to me. I think of it more as veganism. And I don't know any vegans that go around being like, I have 100 days vegan and I ate this piece of fish, so I'm not a vegan anymore. I have to start my
Yeah.
veganism over.
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
That's just silly. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't unlearn anything, that I have accumulated over the last 3.5 years, right? And I continue to live an alcohol-free lifestyle. I continue to grow and to do my therapy and to do all my other self-care. It's when the relapse for me, like that's why we have different terminology in Dry Club, is that you have your fall forward, you have your slip, and you have your relapse. So your fall forward is, kind of like a slip. It's like when you drink and you keep going, you keep going with your sobriety, and you go, you know what, that was a mistake. I learned something from it though. Maybe
Yeah.
I learned that it doesn't help with my anxiety anymore. It doesn't, do XYZ. And so you fall forward because you are continuing to progress. Like it's this idea that making a mistake is such a bad thing. Like you don't learn if you don't make mistakes. And so we have that. You have your slip, which is, I'm not going to go rag on somebody because, they maybe ordered a mocktail at the bar and it wasn't a mocktail and they drank it by accident, or, they decided they were going to try having a glass of wine and then they had half and they were like, no, no, no. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't change anything. And then of course you do have your relapse, which is when you do, for me, that's the dangerous one. And that's the bender comes back. You go back into old drinking patterns. It's weeks, it's months. It's no longer a mistake or a learning lesson, or a moment in time. This is a, a backward step. So you don't want to obviously fall into that. But the thing is, we're here for you, even if you do. Like, I think half of our members are not even, fully abstinent. They're sober curious. Um, and I want them to know that we're here no matter what. There's no shame in going back to something that used to work for you. We all have done it. Maybe not with alcohol, but with food, with
Yeah.
eating disorders, with relationships. Like we're all human. We make mistakes, and I don't know one perfect fucking person. Like they just don't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. We learn from our mistakes. They're always a learning experience. And I think such a huge takeaway from what you said too is that this journey isn't one size fit all or fits all. At least for everybody that I've met through, social media that's a part of this. I've talked to other people. Everyone has such a unique story that's totally their own. So if you're listening to this and you're curious about, if you are sober curious, if you're thinking about ditching alcohol, whatever it might be, recognize that your path doesn't have to be what someone else's path was. Doesn't have to be my path,
Mm-hmm.
Kayla's. It's your story, right? So think about it. Think about what it is that you want. I think a big part of it too is just assess your relationship with alcohol as a whole, why you think it should be a part of your life and why you don't want it to be anymore. Do some inner work, like self-reflection, I think would be a huge thing. But kind of switching gears, for anybody that's
Yes.
thinking about, ditching alcohol in this new year, 2021, it's a clean slate. Do you have any suggestions for people, resources they can access? What would you say is your biggest advice?
So there are a ton of resources, right? And I'm going to do a shameless plug here. But obviously, I would love to have anybody check out 1000 Hours Dry. We're an online community and educational platform. And our main platform right now is Instagram. So it's just at 1000 Hours Dry. And what we personally, provide is inspiration, education about alcohol consumption, how alcohol affects the body. We provide community and support. And then our specific challenge, if you are somebody who, whether you're sober curious and you're, considering abstinence, or you just want to take, a break, it's a 42-day challenge where you practice abstinence for 42 days. And we guide you through that. We give you daily tasks. We have a totally free accountability tracker that I created based on behavioral psychology that you can download and print out for free. That will kind of get you day through day and help you learn more about different kinds of drinking, gray area drinking, sober curiosity. And you can just kind of expand your alcohol-free knowledge. That way, at the end of those 42 days, you can really make a decision for yourself as to how you want to move forward. We also recommend a ton of different podcasts. If you go through our highlights, there's a ton of Quit Lit, which is quit drinking literature. You can also just Google Quit Lit, and there's a ton of great books. I also personally love books about like habit changing. So Atomic Habit, The Power of Habit, Mindset, like all really great books that I'm reading or have read or am reading right now. Podcasts, like this one. I also have a podcast called The Dry Life. And just looking up sobriety or sober in your podcast platform, there's a ton of good ones: Seltzer Squad, Recovery Elevator, and connecting with other people. So if you're not ready, to be super open about your sober curiosity, that's totally fine. I know a lot of people who create anonymous Instagram accounts, uh, and just you follow a bunch of people and start to learn and start to connect. And then when you're ready, you can open up about your name. You can open about, maybe post a picture of yourself when you're ready, but there's no pressure. Um, but there's a lot of great, resources out there besides our community, like I want to point you in the right direction. So, there are specific groups for just women. There are specific groups for just men. There's apps that you can use, like our app. We have the Reframe app. We've been working with John Hopkins on that, and that's really a neuroscience-based app. If you're super serious about, changing your relationship with alcohol, I would recommend trying that out. We have a 7-day free trial going on right now. But for me, it's all about education, right? So I'm making sure that I'm listening to a new podcast every day. I love The Hidden Brain, trying to read 10 pages of a book, and really immersing myself in the community and staying connected. Because when you have friends, when you have support, and when you start to find other people who have the same thought processes as you, or maybe the same experiences, you start feeling less alone. You start feeling more confident in your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the social media, connection, community aspect of it is huge. And you'd be surprised. I'd take it from somebody who had no idea really the landscape that I was entering. There is such a supportive community out there of people who are, like you said, going through the same kind of thing. And I just want to commend you because you're doing some amazing stuff with 1,000 Hours Dry, and it has totally helped me along my journey, connecting with other people who are also alcohol free and realizing that, we're not alone in this. There's a lot of us out there, and you'd be surprised. So I think you're, like I said, doing amazing things with 1,000 Hours Dry. Guys, if you are interested in checking out any of this stuff, I'm going to leave links to all of it in the description for you. Poke around, explore. It's definitely worth it. It certainly has been for me. Like I said, the social media community connection has been a huge piece of it for me because a lot of people in my life are still drinkers. And especially with the pandemic too, it's been harder to, physically connect with other people who are in this space. But yeah, Instagram's a huge platform for that. So Kayla, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Of course. I enjoyed talking to you so much, and I got to get you on the Dry Life podcast soon.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. Well, have a great day.
Thanks.